Hello, MCU fans! Today we take a look at the question of when does Agatha All Along happen in the MCU timeline. Now, I've done some earlier prediction videos on this, but this will be my official position on where I think it fits in. Now, there will be spoilers for pretty much every episode of the series, but as long as you're okay with that, then let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have a November contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, and 5 random winners will win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out in case you're interested. All right, so I like to start with the Disney Plus timeline, and I do realize that some people are like, dude, the thing is a mess, it's not official, why are you looking at it? Well, keep in mind that in The Hollywood Reporter, executive producer Brad Winderbaum was quoted as saying, "So we were able to do it," referring to placing the Netflix shows in the timeline, fairly quickly. And it's interesting that the service of Disney Plus actually became the statement just by rearranging those tiles. That's our medium to define canon now, which is wild to think about. So hey, if Brad Winderbaum is saying that's how they define the canon timeline, I'm going to trust it. But I respect if anybody just chooses not to. So, all right. I'm going to put the month and the year for each of the most recent entries up to Agatha All Along, and then we'll get to Agatha. And I'm going to quickly go through why these were placed here. You can check out my longer videos if you want to know more, but here's a quick summary. So Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, that's pretty easy. December of 2025, the timeline book literally tells us that. And in fact, it's the last entry in the timeline book. So that means everything else is in 2026 or beyond. So Quantumania gives us a real nice July date at Scott's book reading, so that's easy. Guardians of the Galaxy is a little trickier. They don't give us much, but in the post-credit scene with Star-Lord with his grandpa, he is reading from the St. Charles Post, which is in Missouri, and notice there's an article down below. If we zoom in, bad weather won't keep public at bay, festival to continue. So we need a festival in St. Charles, Missouri. Well, hey, guess what? There is one. And in fact, 350,000 people attend it. So surely this is the one they're talking about. It's the third full week of August. So there you go. August works perfect. Secret Invasion seems on the surface to be easy, although we will be coming back to it later in the video. But so for now, hey, look, in episode 1, they tell us an attack is planned for tomorrow, Unity Day. That's a very culturally significant day in Russia, which every year is November 4th, so that places it November 4th of 2026. And in fact, the weather in Russia looks like November, so that works. Okay, so perfect. Well, not so perfect, because the Marvels has a problem. It's after Secret Invasion, obviously, yet Kamala's age is a bit of a mess if it's in November. So we see in the Miss Marvel show, which is in September of 2025, that Kamala is 16, and also that she's in her junior year. Okay, well, at the beginning of the Marvels, which we're saying is in November of 2026, we see that she's not studying for science, so she's in school. So obviously in November, you're in school. And she has not yet graduated. That works perfect. She's a senior. It's basically Nick Fury's telling Monica Rambeau, if you don't rescue her, she's not going to be able to graduate. So she's a senior, but she's also 16. Well, that doesn't work because she can't be 16 in September of 2025 and still 16 in November of 2026. And in fact, the director doubled down and said that she's 16. So, okay, we're going to come back to that, but even the weather seems like a mess, right? Because the weather in Secret Invasion, that doesn't look like November. And the weather in the Marvels does not look like November. Dude's in a short sleeve shirt. Granted, sometimes you have, warmth into November, but still, in general, the weather doesn't seem to fit either. So we're going to come back to this. But for now, we're going to go with November because of Unity Day. Okay, so I'm going to scoot everything to the left by 1. Boink. So bye-bye, Guardians of the Galaxy, so we can add in Agatha. So when does Agatha take place in the timeline? Okay, well, let's see. First, we're going to start with when did Agatha come to Westview? So back in WandaVision, when did she come? Because that is very important to the timeline. So she says, "Oh, when I sense this place, the afterglow of so many spells cast all at once." So it's pretty clear that Agatha came to Westview right after the Hex was created because she knew there was power there. Okay, so then when was it created? Well, if we look in the timeline book, we do get fall for the return from the blip and fall again for the beginning of WandaVision. But we all want more than fall, right? We want the months, darn it. So, okay, thank you, timeline book. That is helpful, but we're going to try to find the exact month. Well, actually, the Miss Marvel show gives us the exact month, because if we zoom in on this little Easter egg in the upper right corner, we can see that the Vanished left in spring of 2018 and returned in October of 2023. Nice. So now we know for sure it's October. And on top of that, Marvel Studios Canada totally used the date on the wiki, the Marvel Cinematic Universe wiki, best wiki on the planet, October 17th. So they're literally saying October 17th of 2023, that's when everyone came back. And isn't it weird to think that the blip, even though it jumped 5 years forward, we're now past it? I mean, literally, IRL, we're in 2024, and the blip was over a year ago. That's crazy. But anyway, October 17th, that's when people came back. We also know that Monica Rambeau, that has been 3 weeks since the blip, the return, when she came to report. So we're now moved into November. And WandaVision perfectly fits that because we get a calendar in episode 4 that matches November of 2023 and seems to indicate that something special is happening on November 10th. So, okay, we are into November. That works. In fact, the wiki goes day by day through a WandaVision, and it says, and I believe it completely, that Sunday, November 5th is when she created the hex, and Saturday, November 11th is when it came down. So it's not very long. The hex was up for, basically a week. Why is Saturday so important, though? That we learn because of Agatha's series. So let's look at William Kaplan for a minute. William Kaplan says something important happened to him when he was 13. So he was 13 when the hex went down. So we see that he is celebrating his bar mitzvah, having a magic mitzvah. So let's talk a little bit about how that works. So if we look at Jewish culture, we can see that you celebrate your bar mitzvah during Saturday morning services, which is what William is doing here. But really important is it's the Saturday following your Jewish birthday. So not your Gregorian calendar birthday, your Jewish birthday. Well, let's look at this real helpful site, Chabad.org, which lets you put in your date of birth, and it will tell you your Jewish birthday. So let's just say William was born on 10/29/2010. Well, that would make his bar mitzvah, his Jewish birthday, November 5th. And then remember, you can celebrate it on the next Saturday. So if we look at that timeline, Gregorian birthday, October 29th, bar mitzvah, November 5th, celebration, November 11th, which is a Saturday, and that's the date the hex went down. See how that all fits together perfectly. Now, I will point out that you can sometimes delay your celebration, so it means Billy could maybe be born a little bit earlier in October than October 29th if they delayed the celebration for some reason, but let's just for now go with October 29th because that fits really well. All right, so then let's also find the latest his birthday could be. Well, 11/4 of 2010 gives us a bar mitzvah literally on Saturday, November 11th. So that would mean Gregorian birthday, November 4th, bar mitzvah, November 11th, and literally the celebration on the same day. So I think that's really cool. I love how the series let us learn something about the Jewish culture. So here's another date that's interesting. In the credits of every episode, we saw near death in Westview over at the same time they gave us Joe Locke's name. So seemingly this is referring to his near death, and notice the newspaper article was written on December 14th of 2023. Well, it must be that this is just like a month after his near death because clearly the hex went down in November. So this is an interesting date, but I don't know that it tells us anything. And then we jump 3 years later, and we see that William is now 16. And remember, if his birthday is likely somewhere between October 29th and November 4th, that would put us at the earliest in late October of 2026. And of course, we could easily be in November of 2026. It gets reinforced this whole 3 years later because Agatha has been under the spell for 3 years. You've been under the influence of another. They took your agency for 3 years. We also see the library card, which of course has the acronym for Darkhold. So we know it's representing the Darkhold. And we learn the book wasn't checked out. It was stolen 3 years ago. So there's 3 years again. And of course, it was stolen by Wanda at the end of WandaVision because she took off with it. And then finally, we have Herb answering the question of how long have I been living in this cesspool of a town? And Herb says about 3 years. It is interesting to notice he says about 3 years. I mean, I would think if it was more than 3 years, he would have said over 3 years or just over 3 years. He says about 3, so kind of keep that in mind. But okay, so it's definitely we're in 2026 and we're in late October or sometime in November. This is also just kind of cool. Dottie/Sarah's child was said to be 8 in WandaVision. She says, I have a daughter. She's 8. Well, then we see her in Agatha's series, and she looks like she's probably about 11. So that's just kind of a fun little thing that they kept real nice timeline continuity. Also, it's worth noting that Agatha has been a detective in the spell for just the past few days, because Herb says you haven't been yourself these past few days, meaning she hasn't been acting like, Agnes the nosy neighbor, and instead you got bit by a true crime bug. So that's just interesting to know that I wish we would have known more about why she started acting like a detective. I do think it was Rio, but nonetheless, it's just been the last few days. Okay, so does this newspaper help us? Notice The heading says, examining the red dome anomaly and its impact, referring to the hex. And if we blow it up, we get a February 15th of 2026. Now, one thing I like is they're acknowledging 2026. Granted, it's really small, but still, I love that they're acknowledging 2026. But the February date doesn't help us because we know we're well after that date. So this is just an older story. Okay, so does William's phone help us? Well, I just want to point out this strange thing on his phone that says last week. So this is text messages from Eddie Boyf, who was saying basically, will you come and get me? Be there soon. And then seemingly a week goes by before he texts, tonight was crazy. Obviously, that doesn't make any sense. Clearly, it would have been the same night. So I don't know why they made this mistake, because they would have had to specifically put that in there, but I just wanted to point it out. Ignore that. A week did not go by. I just don't think that makes sense. But we do know that he's only been on the road for 24 hours. So basically, the show spans over just 2 days, a day, a night, and then a little bit of a day. So right around 24 hours. Crazy. Does this library card help us? Well, not really, because it tells us the date that things are due. And in this case, it's the Darkhold. So these are the dates the Darkhold is due back. So that doesn't really tell us much, because it's, Agatha Harkness, it was supposed to return it on January 21st, Wanda Maximoff on October 13th. I don't know. You can tell me if you think those help, but I don't think they do. Plus, I really think they're random, because 4 of them are famous people's birthdays. Elizabeth Olsen, Jack Kirby, Kevin Feige, and of course, Stan the Man Lee, R.I.P. buddy. All right, so yeah, I don't think this helps us. Does this evidence box help us? So this fellow over here, this is during the spell, so you don't know if you really can trust anything during the spell, but if we blow it up, looks like November. You can see on the top line there, it looks like November, maybe 17th. Kind of hard to tell. I wish I had a more HD player, but still, maybe November. And then also, the boxes are still around when the spell is done, because now she's outside of the spell talking to Teen. There's a box. But notice, sorry, Agatha, got to cover you up. Notice now we're getting like maybe it's a March date. I think I can see an August date in there. So the bottom line is, how did she get these boxes? Because if they really exist outside the spell, did she steal them from the garbage can at the police station? If so, I don't think we can rely on these. I don't think we can take the November date, the March date, the August date. I mean, these could be any year. These could be any time. So I don't think they help us, unfortunately. How about this date? Notice the calendar on Lilia's refrigerator has November. Okay, that seems solid, right? Well, except for the fact that the year, if you look real closely, is 1946. And by the way, it perfectly aligns to November in 1946 because the 1st is a Friday, and that's how this calendar works. So some people have guessed, since Lilia is kind of outside of time, she doesn't care what specific year her calendar is as long as the days all match. But that's just it. They don't match, because in 2026, Friday is not the 1st. So maybe this is trying to tell us it's in November, but I don't think so. I think it's really trying to tell us that Lilia has old calendars. But anyway, you can let me know your thoughts on that. There's another interesting date. So the evidence bag that the library card is in, right here, you can't really read it because it's backwards, right? But if we blow it up and flip it around, we can see that it's the date and time of recovery, and maybe that's a 10. Maybe that's October. Again, these dates are just so blurry, unfortunately. I do think it's a 10, but man, can we really rely on that to tell us it's in October? All right, so I hate to do this, but let's look at the weather, because it may be the only way we can get an answer here. So in the spell, the weather is clearly fall. I mean, there's no leaves on the tree, but again, it's in the spell. I don't know if we can rely on that, though, because outside of the spell, it seems more like early fall. I mean, the leaves have changed. We can see some yellow leaves, but still, there's a lot of green, and they haven't fallen off the tree yet. I think, honestly, the biggest timeline hint is Sharon herself, good old Mrs. Hart. She says that she's planting azaleas. Now remember, she has a green thumb. The whole reason she was mistaken for a green witch is because her green thumb. So let's look at when you plant azaleas. Well, the best time is late spring or early fall. So that would be like a September, maybe October timeframe. So clearly this is a warmer season, 2026 in the MCU. So it could be in October, but man, I'm really struggling with this being November. I'm going to be honest, because you're supposed to do early fall, and November is late fall. So there's that. And then let's go back to this Herb comment again. So Herb is basically saying you've been here about 3 years. Well, that would fit with an October of 2026 if she arrived in November of 2023. about 3 years. And I still think the fact that Werewolf by Night is basically placed on October 31st in the timeline, I think Agatha being a Halloween show just makes so much sense, especially when we look at these other clues. So personally, I'm going to place it in October 2026. I know some people place it in November, and we're going to see that ultimately I don't know that it matters that much, but I feel like the Azaleas and Herb's comment place us in October. But obviously that causes issues with the placement for Secret Invasion and the Marvels. But I don't know that Agatha is the reason those need to move. There are some bigger issues with those being in November. So remember, Kamala's age didn't work. Let's talk about how we might be able to fix that if we move the Marvels a little bit earlier. So the wiki places the Miss Marvel show, episode number 1, on September 16th. And by the way, that's when she said she was 16. It's in episode 1. So let's go with September 16th, and we know she's 16 on that date. So that's the only thing we know for sure. But for the minute, let's place the Marvels in early September, where we know she would still be 16. Well, let's just say her birthday is September 10th. Well, that would mean that she wouldn't turn 17 for a few more days. So it would actually work as long as we were early in September. We have to be when the school year starts, by the way, because in New Jersey, the school year starts in early September. So she has to be in school, yet not have turned 17. But we know she's 16 by September 16th. Does that all make sense? So really, I think this could work if we move the Marvels into early September. Now, I've had some people say, dude, this doesn't work, though. She can't possibly be 16 in her senior year. But notice that New Jersey state statute says that students who will be 5 by October 31st can be admitted in kindergarten, and even 4-year-olds could be admitted. They're not guaranteed, but it's up to the local district. So my point is, she could still be 16 in her senior year if she started kindergarten at age 4. And she seems really smart, so I could totally see that happening. Okay, so I think if we scooch things back a bit, so we move the Marvels into September, and that would move Secret Invasion even earlier, because Secret Invasion has to end before the Marvels starts, so it probably creeps it into August. And then it has to be after Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which is in the 3rd week of August. So it barely fits, but I think all of this fits. Now, what about Unity Day, though, right? Unity Day now is messed up. But then again, Marvel's had all kinds of problems with these cultural dates. The Qingming Festival did ultimately work in Shang-Chi, but only when they fixed it at the last minute for the timeline book. On the other hand, the Prague Festival of Lights in Far From Home totally is not the right timing, nor is the Eid celebration in Miss Marvel's own show. So I hate throwing out a date like Unity Day, but Marvel seems to ignore some of these cultural dates. So this is what I'm going to go with for the timeline. I'm going to go with October for Agatha All Along, and I'm going to push both Secret Invasion and the Marvels back. Now, if you need further proof, I'm going to talk a little bit now about Captain America Brave New World and Thunderbolts placement. But I will do a warning. I know some people don't like to know anything about trailers, and I am going to talk a little bit about the trailers for both of those movies. I will say none of them are really spoilers for the movie. They're things we already know, but still, if you're somebody who doesn't want to know anything about upcoming stuff, then, this would be a time to bow out. I'm not offended. But for everybody else still here, let's talk about Captain America Brave New World. So first of all, the toy, and I promise this is not an issue like the Funko leaks. This is just interesting information. On the Captain America Legends toy, it tells us after carrying the mantle of Captain America for a few years, Sam Wilson must use his intelligence and make new allies to stop a force unlike he's seen before. Okay, so a few years. A couple is 2, a few is normally 3. So that seems to place Captain America Brave New World in 2027. So I'm going to bet it is indeed going to be after Agatha All Along. I had this fun theory that maybe the movie was back in 2025. Doesn't look like it. So 2027. Okay, but when in 2027? Well, we know that Ross is newly elected because they said lose the mustache or lose the election. So he didn't replace Ritson. He was elected. In fact, we see his inauguration ceremony here. This is probably soon after he assumed the role of the presidency. In fact, in Marvel.com's article, they tell us for certain that he is a newly elected U.S. president. So he won outright in an election. Also, we do see cherry trees at full bloom in several of the trailer shots, and those bloom in late March. Okay, probably then we're talking about March of 2027. That's going to be my guess for Captain America Brave New World. So we're going to talk briefly about Thunderbolts and its placement in the timeline, and then we're going to come back and talk about Secret Invasion and the transition from Ritson to Ross. Okay, so in the Thunderbolts trailer, we see John Walker is reading about his downfall while his kid's just crying away. And on his phone, he's got this story up. And if we zoom in, it says the story of what went wrong starts long before his unveiling just a few short years ago. So again, a few short years ago. So we're talking 3 years after Falcon and the Winter Soldier in 2024. So yeah, 2027 yet again. Also, we see in another shot in the trailer this poster at this big party everybody's having. If we zoom in on the poster, they seem to be honoring the heroes of the Battle of New York. So my guess is that this is the 15th anniversary of the Battle of New York. And so yeah, that's very likely places us in May of 2027, and not long after Captain America, A Brave New World. Okay, so now let's figure out how on earth there was an election for Ross, because in Secret Invasion, remember, we have Ritson talking to Fury, and Fury tells him that's real one-term president stuff. Well, you wouldn't say that to somebody after they already lost in the election. And here's the problem. Unity Day is November 4th. We talked about that. Well, the election in 2026, which I realize is not a presidential election, we'll come back to that in a minute, but the election, the general election, will be November 3rd. So literally, he would have already lost if we were trying to elect a president in 2026. And Fury never would have said this line. So let's look at what we know and what we don't know about the more recent presidents. So we do know Trump was president because he's mentioned in the Netflix shows, which are now canon, particularly the Luke Cage show. But we don't know if he was blipped. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. We don't even know if Biden was ever president. We don't know when Ritson ran because the blip could have moved the election cycle, which I really got some cool ideas on that, much better than what I've suggested in the past. I think you'll really like it. And then Ross, we seems that he ran in 2026 and became president in 2027, but how does this all fit in? Okay, let's just throw out the idea that Trump was blipped. That would be May of 2018, and there is a line of succession for the president, but we're talking half the world, and particularly half the U.S., is gone now. So, I can see a lot of people crying foul. So let's say in November of 2018, so the same year of the blip, they do a new election. And Biden wins that. Trump's gone, right? He's blipped. So now Biden is president from 2019 to 2022. Then we have an election in 2022. So Ritson wins and runs from 2023 to 2026. And then that allows an election in 2026 for Ross to become president in 2027. That works perfectly. So my hope is that in Captain America Brave New World, they have some throwaway line that says that Trump was blipped and that messed up the whole election. Or just the blip messed up the election. Something, please, Marvel, explain this. But this would work perfectly. So if Secret Invasion is in August now, then early September, that would fit with Fury's line. So let's look at how moving Secret Invasion in the Marvels earlier makes so many things fit better. First of all, the weather works better for all three entries because it was warmer weather in Secret Invasion, the Marvels, and Agatha. It places Fury's comment about, being a one-term president. Now it fits perfectly because it's 2 months before the November election when he says that. Kamala's age now works with her being 16, and planting the azaleas, to me, works better in October for Agatha All Along. So yeah, this is what I think the Marvel timeline looks like, not only for the stuff that has come out, but for even Captain America 4 and Thunderbolts. So let me know your thoughts. I'm always open to ideas. I just really like how this fits. Okay, so don't forget, November contest, be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook, and there's that membership option in case you're interested in that. And I always love to mention the Discord. We're now starting a What If pitch contest. It's actually the third time we've done this, and we're expanding this to a What If episode for Marvel, DC, or Star Wars. So we'd love to have you join us on the Discord. 1,900 members. I will leave a pinned comment so you can join. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.